So it's time to start working with a database, and what we're going to do is install a database, and the one I'm recommending and the one I'll be using throughout the remainder of this course is Postgres. There are other ones, of course, but Postgres is the one I'm going to work with. And what we're going to do is install this, install a graphical client that allows us to connect to it, and we'll figure out how databases work before we actually get to the steps where we hook our application up to Postgres and start persisting our data in that way. So the install for Postgres is found at this URL, www.postgresql.org/download. And we're going to do it slightly differently depending on whether you're on Windows or Mac. We'll start with Windows. If you're on Windows, click on the Windows button. And what you're going to do is click Download the Installer right here. And that will take you to a page that shows all the various downloads. And assuming you're on a Windows 64-bit system, which most of you probably are because 32-bit systems are getting really old, download this version. At the time I record this, it's 13.1. Download that and run the installer. Now, when you run the installer, when you get to the second or third step of the installer, it's going to ask you, first of all, it'll ask you to set up Postgres, say yes. Then step 2, choose a directory, just choose the default directory. Step 3 is going to say select components. And I strongly recommend you leave Postgres server installed. You have to have that. That'll be the first option. The second option is called pgadmin4. Uncheck that. And I'm going to suggest you uncheck that for a simple reason. That is a client that is installed as part of the process that actually allows you to connect to your database through a web browser and manage the content that way. So it's a graphical user interface that installs a server on your machine and allows you to connect to your local installation of the database through a web browser. The problem with that is every time I have tried to use that, it has grabbed all the system resources from my computer, either my Windows machine or my Mac machine, to the point where things become unresponsive. So I strongly recommend you don't install pgadmin4, but leave everything else checked. The Postgres server, the command line tools, and leave 2 of them unchecked, pgadmin4, and don't bother with Stack Builder. That's of no value to us for this course. So you're only going to have 2 things checked when you install on Windows: Postgres server and command line tools, and then install it. Now, if you're on a Mac, it's a little easier. So we're going to go back here to Packages. This is where we started off on the download page. Choose Mac OS and scroll down. Scroll down to this part, postgres.app. Download this application. And it's really, really easy. It's just an application that when you run it, you just double click on it to start it, your server is running. And when you quit out of it, your server shuts down. And you can't get any simpler than that. So that's how you install the database server on your local machine. Then, in order to connect to that server using a graphical user interface, we're going to go to this place, dbeaver community. So it's https://dbeaver.io/download, and download the community edition. So for Windows, there's the 64-bit installer, and for Mac, here's the installer or the DMG. Use whichever version you want, but install that. And once you do, you'll be all set. We'll be able to connect to our local machine and we'll be able to start doing things. So get those things installed, and when you're done, come back and we'll move on to the next lecture and start playing with the actual database.